formula to it. A very simple formula.
Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Slash It podcast. My name is Jared, and yes, this is Scream 1996 specifically, and we will be talking about all of the Scream films until we get to the point where we are talking about the Scream 2022 film. So yes, thank you for deciding to listen to my podcast, and we can get started talking just about what Scream is and what it did to the horror genre as a whole, because it did a lot. The number one thing is it revitalized the slasher subgenre. It was insanely, it changed everything to do with horror as a whole. It is it's the Star Wars, it's the Jaws of the horror franchise specifically. It changed everything in the horror genre. So before that point, before Scream came out, the slasher tropes had been known, but never really stated. The idea of, don't be a virgin, or don't have sex, or don't drink, or do drugs, or say, I'll be right back, or to investigate a scary noise. All those things, they had been known tropes, but they had never been truly stated the way that they were in Scream. Scream made a lot of money, and it obviously made 4 sequels now. It changed everything. It changed Halloween H2O. Jason X Scream had just come out a few years earlier, so Jason X changed its entire job, its entire script because of Scream. And because of Scream, we get other Kevin Williamson movies like I Know What You Did Last Summer, a bunch of other things too. So we'll talk about more about Scream. We have to talk about the main characters of Scream, which, if you've seen Scream, you know the 4 that I'm talking about. But there's a lot. There's the 3 that I'm talking about, but then there's everybody in this movie is important pretty much. So we will talk about, first off, we'll go with David Arquette as Dewey Riley, or just Dewey, as you'll hear him talked about and named throughout the entire series. David Arquette does an incredible job as Dewey. Dewey's theme is incredible. I love Dewey's theme. It is taken actually from Broken Arrow, which is a Hans Zimmer movie, Hans Zimmer score, which that's crazy. I'm so happy about that they got that theme back for Scream, 3 and 4, and kind of, sort of, spoiler alert, but Scream 5. It's incredible. I'm so happy they did it. There's a lot of other little things about Scream 5 that Dewey has some stuff about, and I'm not going to talk about too much about, but there's little Easter eggs and stuff with Dewey's character in Scream 5 that I absolutely adore, and we will talk about that in a different podcast, potentially, or a different video when we get to that point. I have a video on my channel, Scream 2022 discussion. I didn't want to make a podcast about it yet, so I made a video about it. So yes, now we're moving on to the quote-unquote final girl of the Scream franchise. Neve Campbell as Cindy Prescott. Incredible. She does an incredible job at being Cindy Prescott and in truly engrossing that character. She does an insane job at making the actual characters important, like the characters around her important, by being who she is. And I think that she did a great job at making Cindy Prescott feel like a true human being compared to how some of the other characters in other horror movies feel it's kind of one dimension, not really truly being a human, if that makes sense. They don't really feel like... Cindy Prescott did an incredible job at making it feel like that the person that she was be a human. Cindy Prescott's a human, and we can thank Neve Campbell for that. Cindy Prescott is in every Scream movie. She's the final girl in every one of them. The Ghostface pretty much is always trying to kill Sydney for whatever reason, given the motives of whatever character in whatever movie they are in. That's pretty much what happens. We'll talk about more about the killers in this movie later on. Like the actual reasons why in Scream they're killing people. We can talk about that a little bit. So Neve Campbell does a great job. I can actually talk, once we get to Drew Barrymore's character, I will talk a little bit about how Neve Campbell actually got this role. But then, yeah, so we'll move on from Neve Campbell to Courtney Cox as Gale Weathers. Whoa. Gale Weathers is an incredible character. Courtney Cox coming right from Friends. I think she was right in the middle of Friends. Or, I'm not exactly sure in when, because I've only seen one episode of Friends. I don't know when Friends came out, but I think she was still incredibly popular from Friends because of Friends. So she came out and she became Gale Weathers, and now she is incredibly attached to the role of Gale Weathers. I can't think of anybody else who would perfectly be able to play the role and the identity that you need for Courtney Cox, or for Gale Weathers to have. She's a jerk, but a lovable jerk, and you can feel the chemistry between David Arquette and Courtney Cox, and that's because they actually did end up marrying for a while, and they got divorced, but they did end up actually getting married at one point, and that is kind of because they actually met each other on the set of Scream, and you can kind of feel the love forming inside of that movie. And so one important thing to know is that Courtney Cox and David Arquette are actually... So you'll see how in the movies, Screams, 2, 3, and 4, if they get broken up, they're actually not... I think they actually broke up once when they were dating for Scream 2. At the end of Scream 3, they actually got married, and that's because they actually got married in real life. Scream 4, they had divorced, and then in Scream 5, they're kind of dealing with all of that happening. Which actually, happy 10-year, 11-year anniversary to Scream 4, which is kind of insane. It's 11 years since Scream 4 came out. That is crazy. I'm thankful that we got another one with them in it. I hope we can get the same thing with Robert Englund in Nightmare on Elm Street. I hope we get one more with him, even as a cameo, as a passing of the torch type of movie. I'm fine with that. Just get him in there. Random, but still very important. So yeah, that's kind of what happens with their relationship, and because it's directly really tied to what they actually happened in real life. Now we're moving to, so this is how it's listed on the Wikipedia, but this is not necessarily how I would list these, but it's easier for me to keep track of where it is, so I'm not going to switch them. Matthew Lillard as Stewmacher. Actually, this is really funny. You guys might find this kind of funny. I did not know that Matthew Lillard was in Scream until I had seen the Scooby-Doo movies that he is Shaggy in before I saw Scream, which was really funny. I mean, because I was a kid, I was younger, I wasn't born when Scream came out. I was 7 years later, I was born. So Scream 2 and Scream 3 had come out by the time I was born. So Matthew Lillard was Shaggy in my mind. And then when I was 10 or 11, I saw Scream, and he's now forever Stewmacher in my mind. But he's also Shaggy, because that's incredible. But Matthew Lillard is Stewmacher. Stewmacher is the side villain of this movie. He is the bad guy, one of the bad guys, spoiler alert. But he is kind of an interesting character. He's kind of not forced into it, but he kind of just fell into it, I guess is the better word for it. He fell into his insane brain, ideas, he fell into the killings that Stu has done, I guess. There's a lot of talk about what exactly Stu did and what killings he actually did, but, so we kind of don't know for sure. But we will find out eventually what happened, hopefully in some future movie, that they'll tell us exactly who killed who in the original, but I don't know if that'll ever happen or not. So I will talk more about Stewmacher once we get to the killers, but I don't want to tell too much as I'm kind of introducing the characters to you. So I don't know how to pronounce her last name, and but Rose McGowan, I don't know. however it's pronounced. She plays Tatum Riley, which is, yes, Dewey's sister. She dies by getting the garage door lifted on top of her, and she gets her head crushed in the ceiling of the garage. She's never mentioned, fun fact, this is one of a little spoiler, but it's one of the Easter eggs. It's kind of a spoiler, but not really. It's not really a spoiler. It's just like a little Easter egg that you might want to watch by yourself for Scream 5, but it's not like, it doesn't spoil anything for the movie. So Screams 2, 3, and 4, she's never mentioned again after she dies. There's a deleted scene in Scream 4 where she's mentioned, but she was never actually mentioned in those movies. So it's not really confirmed if she was in it or not. They were never confirmed that they would ever talk about it again, like theatrically or in canon, they never talk about her. But until Scream 5, where we see like an urn or like some kind of dedication to Tatum in Dewey's apartment, and I love that we finally got that piece of the Scream franchise done. Like we finally have a discussion about Tatum. She's the one who has the line, what is it? It's like, this isn't some, you're starting to sound like some Wes Carpenter flick to Sydney when they're right after the school shuts down and they all have a party. That's when she says that line. So we're going to be moving on to the other killer of this movie, Skeet Ulrich as Billy Loomis. Yes, Billy Loomis. Which is there's a Easter egg. So Billy Loomis's mother, we'll talk about Billy Loomis's mother in Scream 2. Billy Loomis is actually named, so it's Billy Loomis, obviously. Loomis is a great horror movie name. If you know horror movies, Dr. Loomis, that's done all on purpose. But Nancy Loomis plays Annie in the original Halloween, and Nancy was going to be the name of Billy Loomis's mother. So let's move it back to talk about Billy Loomis for a second. Billy Loomis is the real, like, in-your-face killer of this movie. He is the boyfriend of Sidney Prescott, and he's the one who has the very horror movie-ish motive for killing. What he does, he brings the line, what does he say? I would never hurt no, he doesn't say I would never hurt a fly. He goes, so he has the motive, the line that horror movies don't make people crazy, they just make crazy people more creative. No, it's horror movies don't make serial killers, they just make serial killers more creative, or something along the lines of like that. That's Billy Loomis's line. If you ever heard that line, it's from Billy Loomis in Scream. So let's move on to Jamie Kennedy, my favorite character in this movie. Jamie Kennedy as Randy Meeks. Holy crap, Randy is the us character of this movie. He is the one that sets the rules of the world and of horror movies for us. He is in love with horror movies the way that most of us listening to this podcast right now are. It's crazy. I love everything about him. He is us. He's the one who tells us the rules. He's the one who gets to tell us all the rules to be the us character of this movie. And there's really nothing else to say. I love him. He's amazing in this movie. He's perfect for his role. Jamie Kennedy did an incredible job 25 years ago. Did an amazing job, and if you know horror movies, if you've seen Scream, you know that Randy Meeks is the us character. He is us. He's the embodiment of a horror movie lover. And I love that they got Jamie Kennedy because he is the perfect role and the perfect character for this film. So we'll move on to W. Earl Brown as Kenny Jones. Kenny is the cameraman of Gale Weathers in this movie. There's not a lot to say. He dies by a throat slit, I think, to Ghostface in the van at a certain point in this movie, towards the end, third act of the film. There's really nothing else to say, but that's just kind of how it happens. So we'll move on to Joseph Whipp as Sheriff Burke. Sheriff Burke is actually one of the sheriffs. He is Dewey's like boss. You kind of see him a little bit. He doesn't really have a great point in this movie, other than to kind of tell Dewey what to do and to get him to go from one place to another. Which, I mean, that's the point of his character, but that is just what his point of his character is. But yeah, there's nothing really else to say about him, but he exists, and he's someone to know about. So, I don't know how to pronounce this Cotton Weary's actor's name. Lev Schreiber. Something like that. Look it up. It is Cotton Weary, Cotton, and then Weary. That actor, he does a great job as Cotton Weary. Actually, he has a greater role in Scream 2 and Scream 3 than he does in this movie, I think. So basically what his character is he was framed by Billy Loomis for the death of Sidney Prescott, and we will get to more about her character in a little bit and kind of the connections to everything that happened in their characters and stuff. We'll talk about more about that in a little bit once we dive into certain actual characters. But so let's move on to Drew Barrymore as Casey Becker. Casey Becker is the girl from the beginning, the very opening scene, which we'll talk about again in a minute. Casey Becker does an incredible job. Casey Becker does a great job opening the film. Drew Barrymore does a great job as the actor, the actress for Casey Becker. So I'll tell you the fun fact that you might know, but a lot of people may or may not know. So a lot of people think that it was intentional that Drew Barrymore was cast as the girl who died in the beginning. It is not. That is a fun accident, to put it that way. So actually what happened was she had a alternate shooting commitment that she'd already committed to, so she could not take the role of Sidney Prescott. Drew Barrymore was going to be Sidney Prescott, but she couldn't take the role. And Neve Campbell was set to play Casey Becker's part. But then they had to switch him, so Neve Campbell became Sidney Prescott, and Drew Barrymore became Casey. She actually created the idea for Casey Becker's character that she could play Casey to have that trick. So she was not written, and Casey was not rolled to be Drew Barrymore because of the fame, but it worked out that way. So they used Drew Barrymore's face on all of the promotion, so that way it was very psycho-ish, because it kind of adds to the psycho-ish feel of this movie a little bit by making it that way. So let's move on to Roger L. Jackson. He is the voice of Ghostface, the incredible voice of Ghostface. Oh my god. He does an insane job voicing Ghostface. He still voices Ghostface, even in the newest one. They cannot get rid of him to voice Ghostface, but he has an incredible voice. Terrifying voice. One of the scariest voices, besides a few others that I can not name off the top of my head. Insane, incredible job. Nothing else to say. He's the voice of Ghostface in the entirety of the series of Scream films. Let's move on a little bit to Henry Winkler. Henry Winkler, you may know him from Arrested Development, the way I do. He's also known to be the Fonz in Happy Days. If you do not, I don't know how else. Okay, I know him mostly from Arrested Development, so you may know him from Arrested Development, but he's the Fonz from Happy Days, if you do not know that. He is the lawyer. Forget the lawyer's name. He's the lawyer of the family in Arrested Development. He is hilarious. He plays the principal in this film who gets stabbed by Ghostface. And we actually get the cameo from Wes Craven because of his preceding his death. Before his death in Scream. So those are most of the important characters that we need to know of in this movie. One more important one to note, though, is Linda Blair plays a news reporter. She is from The Exorcist. Very important to remember that. It's really cool that they finally got her back in this movie. Or they finally got her to play a cameo role in this movie. Same way they got Wes Craven to play a Fred, the school janitor, reference to, Freddy Krueger. They got him as a cameo to play. He played a cameo in this movie. So that is all of the characters in Scream that are very important for you to know who they are. So we spent 20 minutes talking about that. So let's move on to the opening scene of this movie. Insane. One of the most iconic scenes from this entire movie. All of this movie is iconic entirely. It's entirely an iconic role. So the opening scene begins with Casey Becker. She is on the phone. She gets a phone call, as Ghostface is known to do. Ghostface calls. She picks up. She starts talking. Ghostface asks her what she's going to do. She says she's going to play a bunch of movies. She's going to watch a movie. What's her favorite scary movie? Halloween. And isn't that the one where... And then she says, isn't that the one Freddy... So Ghostface asks her what her favorite scary movie is. She says Halloween. He says that he really likes that movie. And then he asks her what's his favorite scary movie. And Ghostface replies, A Nightmare on Elm Street. And then Casey Becker goes something along the lines of, I don't like the first one. After that, they just get boring or something like that. Ghostface asks, who am I looking at? Which is, I'm saying it not as terrifying as he does. But he says it incredibly terrifyingly. And pretty much they begin to make a way of... So Ghostface then... So basically, I'll skip a lot of the plot, so in case you don't know what happens in it, so you can kind of get a little surprised if you're still going to listen to this. She asks her to play a bunch of games. She gets the question wrong, and I will ask the question to you. I'll give you 5 seconds to think about the answer, and then we will move on. Ghostface asks the question, who is the killer in the original Friday the 13th? And she shouts, Jason, Jason, Jason. And if you know, which I'm thinking you might, if you've listened to this, or if you listen to watch my bite-sized films, you would know this, or listen to the podcast too. Pamela Voorhees is the killer in the original Friday the 13th, the mother of Jason. And one of the most important parts about that aspect of the movie is when she answers Jason, it shows, it's one of those things that's hey, no, if you knew the answer to that question, you wouldn't have died. She asks a bunch of other questions before that one, but that's the one that she gets wrong, that kills her boyfriend, Steve. But yes, so I'll talk about this opening scene. I love this little fact. So there are two Ghostface killers in this movie, Billy and Stu, if you did not know that. So he kills Bill. They kill Steve, and so she has a back door and a front door. Keep that in mind. There's two killers, the back door and the front door. So she asks where. So after Ghostface killed Steve, she was asked, where is the killer, the back or the front? We only think there's one killer at this point in the movie, right? So what happened was, I think, my personal belief, is that Stu or Billy was on the front, and Billy or Stu were in the back. One of them was on the back and the front. So in whichever way she guessed, she'd be wrong, and she would get killed. So either way, she would be losing the game, because she answered the wrong question, whichever way she went. So, that's what I like. And it's possible that there's other little few things that I probably will talk about in a different video that I find incredibly interesting to kind of comprehend all of it. That opening scene is incredibly iconic. Her parents come in up to the house later on because she's home alone. They find her dead and tied to the tree, completely gutted. One little Easter egg to remind you, the husband of the mother of Casey Becker shows up, and they actually end up so the Mr. Becker, the husband, asks and tells his husband or his wife to go down to the Mackenzies, and that is a direct reference to Halloween, where Jamie Lee Curtis tells the two kids to go down to the Mackenzies and call the police. That is incredible. I love that little Easter egg. If you did not catch that, go check it out. Watch Halloween, or look at that clip of Halloween, and then watch that clip, the opening scene of this movie, and it's a direct reference. I love it. It's incredible. So we're going to move on to Sidney Prescott's character a little bit more, because we've been talking for about 30 minutes, and I do want to make sure that you guys can keep this to a little bite-sized chunk. Maybe a little bit. We'll go a little bit further in case you guys want to hear more about how I think about Scream, but I do want to make sure you guys can listen to all of this, because I love having this for you guys to listen to. I love someone else having what I love, and having podcasts about people who talk and love horror movies, just that emit the way I hope I do. That was a random tangent, but I do hope that you realize just how much I love scary movies as a whole. So Sidney Prescott is the main final girl of this movie. She is incredible at this job. She is in Scream 1, 2, 3, and 4. I know I mentioned this earlier, but she basically is the girl from Alien. Her name is slipping my mind. Alien is that whole franchise is a movie. A lot of movies I haven't seen. So that one and Predator are two movies I haven't seen that I need to check out that whole series. But I'm focusing on slashers right now, kind of making sure that I'm watching as many old-fashioned slashers as I can. I've been watching The Mutilator, which is a very interesting movie. I don't know how much I like it. It's kind of whatever. It's trash, but it's the fun trash that I like. It's got that weird 80s slasher vibe. But Sidney Prescott, she's tough. She's a tough character. She's smart. She's not the stupid characters that you expect from a movie like this. She is Billy Loomis's sister in this movie, or Billy Loomis's girlfriend, sorry. And they do a great job at making it where you kind of make it feel real, and it feels their relationship feels real. So they have sex at one point in the movie. You don't see anything, so you're fine in that aspect. If you're worried about that, you don't see nothing. But which I actually kind of like. I like that they divide that role of a slasher movie, where they actually don't have any nudity in this movie. There's none. And so they have sex. So Sydney is no longer a virgin, which, you're not supposed to do that in a horror movie. So she gets attacked. You think she's gonna die. She survives. That's how this movie goes. That's what I love about this movie. It's incredible. It makes the love of this movie real, and it also you can kind of view a lot of this through Wes Craven's own, how do I say this? Wes Craven's own issues with certain religious aspects and religious things in his own mind. I won't talk about that too much now, but that's a whole thing to dive into. The theological issues with Wes Craven that he had with Catholicism and the way he was raised as he was raised Catholic. There's a lot of kind of inner depths that you can kind of interpret the way that Scream is done, and I won't talk about that now because I want to make sure that this is open for anybody who wants to listen to this, and I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings or opinions or whatever you may feel, so I don't want to hurt you. But he was Catholic. He was raised Catholic, and I think this movie in a lot of ways is him dealing with his issues with religion the way that he grew up. I think he kind of used this movie as a way of dealing with the issues that he had in his own head. So basically the way that you need to look at this movie is through the lens of horror movies, and then you can look through it in a more deeper mythology, theological way afterwards. Use it as a deeper understanding of horror as a whole. So I'm going to skip Gale Weathers and Dewey because I kind of heavily talked about them and everything. But they get married. There's a lot that I cite. So the thing is, I want to end their plot, but that'll spoil it for Scream 5. And I don't want to say anything about what happens in Scream 5 so that anybody who's listening to this can listen to it and still enjoy Scream 5 spoiler-free as much as possible. So I'm going to move on to kind of the ending of Scream, the endings, the two killers, and the whole meta bit of this movie. So basically, let's start with Billy. So these are going to wrap these two up together while I talk about it. So Billy killed Sydney's mother because Billy killed Sydney's mother because Sydney's mother had fucked Billy's mom or Billy's dad, and so I couldn't remember which way it was. I don't really remember for sure, but I think it was Billy's dad and Sydney's mom. But so they left the family. So Billy killed Sydney's mom a year before Scream takes place. And Sydney's still dealing with the grief and the trauma from her mom, unfortunately passing away. And so then Billy is now, a year later, trying to frame Neil Prescott, Sydney's father, as the killer, trying to the Ghostface killer, so they can get away with it. Basically, they're trying to recreate a horror film. That's what Billy's whole thing is. He's watched a lot of scary movies, and that's where the line, horror movies don't make serial killers. They just make serial killers more creative. That is a completely true. That can be a completely true. I don't know about more creative, but that is a completely true statement. Horror movies do not make serial killers. If you think that, I think you're a little bit crazy. That's just my personal opinion because I love horror movies. So I don't plan on killing anybody. So you gotta understand that these characters are so much more than just anything that I could just tell you. They're how important they are to the characters is all of the tiny little writing that they have. It's all the tiny nothingness discussion that they have with each other. It's all the banter, all the little scenes that truly create the characters the way that you would expect them to be. And that is something that's really important to not only the Scream movie, but to every Scream movie. Every Scream movie has to have the little bits of chemistry that these two killers have. They have to have the same chemistry as all of the characters have, or else it doesn't work. And I don't think we've had anything as close to the chemistry as the first film as we have the fifth film, which I'll be discussing in a future podcast episode. That is all that is great about Scream. There's so much more I could talk about, but I'm kind of trying to give a brief overview about what Scream is, and then I want to go potentially sometime in the future go more of a deep dive, a little bit more research into Scream, all of the Easter eggs, which I'll probably be making a video about all the Easter eggs in Scream. But I want to make a podcast, all of the Easter eggs, all of the characters, all of the names, all of the everything about them. I will be kind of making a podcast episode probably about that. But if you are new here, please consider listening to my other videos or listening to my other podcast episodes. I'm just a human. I'm just a person who loves horror movies the way that someone does, and I love having this outlet to discuss horror movies the way that I would love to have more of. So I do sit here and I talk, and you guys listen sometimes, and I find that incredible, and I love you for it more than you could possibly know. Thank you so much for listening. Recently, I've hit 50 subscribers on my YouTube channel. If you don't know that I do make YouTube videos, I do that. I put a lot of work into those, just as much as I put podcast episodes. Pretty much, that is incredible. It's an incredible amount of people that listen to me talk about horror movies and care about me and my opinions and like that what I create. I talk about all kinds of things here, and you guys listen, and that is one of the best things in the world. 50 people, 50 subscribers to people nowadays in social media terms, it doesn't really seem like a lot, because you see people with 1 million, 20 million, 100 million, 15,000 million, whatever it is, you see these big, huge numbers, right? I would go a little crazy if there were 50 people in a room pointing at me and saying, "Hey, talk to me about scary movies for a bit." That would drive me crazy. That would freak me out. I would be so self-conscious about that. So that's the kind of way that I try to view the numbers. The numbers don't matter. I have goals from the numbers, the way that everybody does, but I also put into perspective the numbers more than a lot of people do, because you guys are all important to me. I would still be here whether there were 10 people here or 20,000 people here, because that's all that matters to me, the way that it matters. A lot of people are very serious. They all want to know, and what's the number? How do I get more people? How do I get more subscribers? I don't care. I just want people to, like the videos that I create, and that's all I care about as much as anything else. So I greatly appreciate you listening to this. If you're hearing this right now, thank you. I love you guys more than you could possibly know. Thank you for listening to me talk. This is one of the greatest things I do. Weekly, monthly, whenever I make it. Videos are my favorite. I am in love with making and creating content for you guys. It is my favorite thing in the world. I adore it more than you could possibly know. Actually, it's one of my favorite things in the world. Thank you for listening, subscribing, and liking to my YouTube videos. And if you're listening to this on YouTube, thank you for watching it on YouTube. If you are listening to this in a car or at work, or microwaving food, or shoveling snow or shoveling sand. I don't know if you're at a beach listening to me talk, if you're shoveling sand, if you're shoveling dirt, if you're making a hole in your backyard, thank you for listening to me while you're doing that. If you're driving a car right now, don't crash. Thank you for not crashing. I appreciate you. Don't text and drive. Thank you for just everything, guys. It is incredible. Thank you for letting me talk. Please go watch more horror movies. Give even the bad horror movies a chance, because if bad horror does great, then good horror does even better. That is one of my mottos I kind of try to view in my head. If bad horror does great, great horror will do even better. And that's one of the most important things to remember. If a horror movie you don't like, does great, and means a horror movie that you do like has a better chance of existing. And that is something that I try to view my life through, view my horror movie life through. So that is greatly appreciated. So yes, if you enjoyed listening to me talk and you have not yet, you can go find my YouTube channel. It's Slash It is the name of it. You can type in Slash It Horror or Slash It BSF. Slash It Podcast, it will show up here. You can type it Slash It Podcast Scream, that should show up for this specific episode. If not, you can follow my Twitter at Slash It Horror, and you can find my YouTube through there, or my Instagram at Slash It Horror as well. That is both of my podcasts are social medias that I use on a daily basis, pretty much. Or you can, if you are feeling so inclined, you can follow me on Patreon. This podcast will actually be the first podcast that goes up early on Patreon, and then that the people will get the next day. So thank you for listening. subscribing, following me, listening to me, wherever you guys decide to do. Even if you don't do anything, and this is the only video you want to listen to me, thank you. I still greatly appreciate you as well. If you want nothing to do with me after this, I appreciate you taking 40 minutes of your time and listening to me talk about Scream and getting some back-end knowledge about everybody in Scream and about some of the motives and stuff in Scream. So we'll be back talking about Scream more in a different video. I have a little video planned about great 2021 horror movies that has not come out. I just recorded it before I recorded this, so I don't know when each one will come out. But until then, thank you for watching, and remember, treat every day like it's Halloween.